Hey, I'm Garrett Gunn. You might know me from Good Boy, Warcorns, Franklin and Gus, and you're watching The Experience.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. Hope you're all having a wonderful day, and let's see if we can make it even better. We got a little talk going on here today. We're going to break down the trailer for the book of Boba Fett and dive into the history of the galaxy's most feared bounty hunter, which is kind of funny with how little he's actually been seen on the actual live action stuff until recently, but the most feared. But before we do that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the movie opening tonight, tomorrow, however you want to look at it, The Eternals. Now, first, there's been a lot of online talk about the negative reviews the movie is getting. And there seems to be a lot of people wanting this film to fail. And I can't help to think that it has to do with some of the controversial things in the production, or at least what some people see as controversial. The first gay hero in the MCU, the diverse cast, it just feels like there's a outright negativity towards this film. And all I can say is that if you're looking at these reviews and you're thinking, oh my God, this is going to be horrible, maybe I shouldn't go. There are 23 movies prior to this, and at worst, they've been better than most of everything else out there. You know, I mean, they're still, if you think Thor: The Dark World's the worst movie, it's still a 66% rated fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, these are all still good movies. So give it a shot. Brian says he's headed out to see it this evening. I'm probably not going to be able to get over to see it till Monday, but in which case we will definitely have a spoiler discussion of it next week. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, leave your expectations at the door, walk in with an open mind, and see what the creative folks have to offer. It's a different movie. I'm currently reading the story of the Marvel Studios, and I'm still within the first couple years in the beginning, and it really breaks down how they make movies and how they're not out there trying to do the same thing over and over again, which is one of the knocks that people give about Marvel, is that it's this formula. And as soon as they go outside of that formula, everybody goes, oh my God, the world sky is falling. So go see the movie and judge for yourself. And that should be the way you look at any movie. You can look at reviews. You can find people that you think have similar tastes in you. But the bottom line is that you are going to like things that you're going to like, not because someone else likes them. So, again, clear your mind, go in, put your expectations aside, and just go see what the movie is and judge it for yourself. All right? Now, another thing that interests me has to be Marvel does these 101 videos. They're just these short little videos. There's no dialogue. There's just music and typed printouts with some art and stuff, or pictures. And they've been doing them for a long time now. And they tend to do them for all the major movies and some of the big character events and stuff. It all takes place on their YouTube page. And I went through the ones for the Eternals, and I picked up some very interesting additional information that we don't get in the trailers. Now, I mean, and some of it has to do with the Celestials, the Deviants, their powers and stuff like that. So let me break these down for you. And I don't think these are spoilers, but I think they kind of open your mind when you go into the theater, that sometimes it's easier if you know a little bit going in, well, especially when you're talking about a movie with 10 new heroes, an entire race of new villains, and these godlike Celestials. So hopefully this will help. Now, the first video is Cersei, and it describes her powers as being matter transmutation, which allows her to change any non-sentient material she touches. So that's why in the trailer, when you see the big red bus flipping over and she does her powers, it doesn't change the bus driver. It just changes the bus into rose petals. The bus driver is fine because he's sentient material. Now, it then says that that as an Eternal, she is part of an ancient immortal beings working on behalf of the architects of existence, the Celestials. And the Celestials sent the Eternals to Earth thousands of years ago to protect mankind from the predatory deviants. And that's pretty much the setup right there. The Celestials, and we're going to get to that in a second, but the Celestials in the comics, of course, are these powerful cosmic beings that create life on different planets as like a giant petri dish and go, okay, we're going to tweak this one this way and that one that way, and let's see what happens. And then they come back and they judge and they go, oh, look, the ants all killed each other or what, And it's not quite going to work the same in the MCU is what we're figuring out here. Now, they refer to Cersei as a humankind-loving Cersei who delights in her mission on Earth and also working as a museum curator in saving humanity. Making heroes museum curators seems to be the big thing lately, especially if you live a long period of time. It's the exact same thing they did with Wonder Woman. So now, and of course, the reemergence of the Deviants after hundreds of years forced the Eternals out of the shadows. She joins with Ikaris and Sprite to reunite her scattered teammates. This also reunites her with her former lover, Ikaris. Cersei and the Eternals must step out of the shadows in order to save the world on one last mission. That one last mission part is the one that really got me to put this together because I think that's important. Now, the majority of that we already kind of knew, but the one last mission part, again, is kind of new. Now, Ikaris's video calls him the moral and charismatic tactician of the group, possessing incredible strength, flight, and can project cosmic energy beams from his eyes. So he's basically their Superman. Ajax is referred to as the spiritual leader of the group with the power to heal both humans and Eternals. She also has the ability to telepathically communicate directly with the Celestials. And of course, that's probably going to be huge. Drug has the ability to control human minds, which they say makes it hard to tell if he's a friend or a foe. And he has withdrawn from the others over differing opinions on their interactions with mankind. Kind of feel like they're setting him up as a bad guy right there. Sprite is said to be a grandiose storyteller of the group who looks like a 13-year-old girl and has the ability to cast lifelike illusions. Now, she is said to be sad and frustrated because she is constantly being dismissed as a child, and it's been that way for centuries, which has her determined to finish their mission and return to their home planet of Olympia, where she will be respected. Now, we move on to Gilgamesh, a fierce warrior remembered for his legendary battles where he displays great strength, and he has these energy-enhanced shields that form around his wrists and arms, so when he punches, there adds to it. That's how his cosmic power works. And he and Athena becomes partners following the events that lead to the dissolution of the Eternals. Bakari is described as the fastest woman in the universe, which means that there could be a fastest man in the universe, the way they phrase that. Shouldn't it just be the fastest person in the universe? Anyway, and she's kind of bored with Earth. She's seen it all. She's explored everything. And she's ready to move on. She's ready to finish her mission, head back to Olympia, and then go explore other planets. Now, but her intimate knowledge of Earth is going to help them out in this final battle. Phastos is described as a technology-minded and the group's inventor. He is a technopath, which allows him to use cosmic energy to create any invention or weapon he has access, as long as he's got access to the raw materials. So he can't just whole cloth create them out of nothing. But if he's got access to the materials needed to make it, he can then make it all come together in the right way. He's anonymously been pushing humanity's technology forward over the centuries. So a lot of our inventions are supposed to be coming from him. Now, Athena is most comfortable in battle and can manifest any handheld weapon she can imagine. So her powers work very differently from Phastos, where they both can create things. He can create things using materials. She can create any handheld weapon just by imagining it and just makes it out. So it's actually made of the cosmic energy. Kingo has done the most with his centuries on Earth, building up his own fame and using his teammates' stories as inspirations for the film. So basically, his Bollywood films are all his teammates' histories, you know. I think when we meet him, he's actually doing a movie of Icarus. Now, that covers the 10 heroes. By the way, Kingo can also sing, act, and emit cosmic energy explosions and projectiles from his hands. So expect to see a lot of finger guns, because that seems to be how he works his powers. They do a video on the deviants, and they're described as an ancient race of monstrous predators that wipe out the intelligent life forms on each planet they inhabit. They've been around as long as the Eternals, and though once eliminated due to unexpected events, the deviants and their leader Crow are back. Now, those unexpected events was that the snap, or was there something else? We don't know that yet. They also release a video of the Celestials, and it calls them the colossal progenitors of the universe who have used their cosmic energy to create the building blocks of all life. And they send the Eternals to stop a parasitic life form known as the Deviants, who are preying on Earth and humanity. They task the Eternals to help nurture humankind's growth and advancement as a self-sufficient life form. That's a lot of information dump, I realize that. But there's some things we can take away from these short videos, and besides just the power of each individual member and the idea that something drove them apart rather than them just separating over time. It wasn't a matter of, well, we've beaten the deviants and now we can just go do our own thing for a while. There seems to have been a catalyst for them separating. And I wonder, since Thena seems to be in some kind of PTSD from it, if it has to do with Crow and the fact that the two of them are, in the comics, have a relationship, but I don't know if that's actually going to be the case here in the series. But also, the talk about it being their last mission. That I find fascinating, because the Celestial one talks about them having created the Eternals and sent them to take on the Deviants. In the comics, the Celestials created all of it. Basically, the Celestials showed up on Earth, created mankind, or humankind as they call it in here, and then genetically split them into the Deviants and into the Eternals. So all of them were created here on Earth off of the humans. And that's also been how mutants are explained, is that the mutant gene was embedded into the humans during this creation process. If that's changed, if the Deviants are actually a different race that has nothing to do with the Celestials, then that changes everything compared to the comics. Because like I said, Earth was basically a giant petri dish where they put these three, they made this race, split it into three variations, and set them to live together with the idea that they'd come back later and see how it turns out and make a decision if they want to keep the planet. But with the idea that they could finish their mission, I guess that means eradicating the Deviants from Earth, it feels like we're not going to end up with all 10 Eternals on the planet when this is all said and done. Now, I can see Circe, Phastos, and Kingo all staying around. Circe loves humankind. She has a relationship with Dane Whitman. She has a job. I could see all that working out. Phastos has a family. He's got a husband and a son. And, so I could see that. And Kingo has built up quite amount of fame and fortune, and I could see him wanting to stick around. Are there any names or terms I should keep an ear out for? I don't necessarily think there's any that I'm not bringing up now. But you do want to keep an ear out for any references to a mutant gene in the humanity, or if it does turn out that maybe it's a bait and switch and we find out that, yes, the Celestials created all of these, because that any reference to a mutated gene in humanity would be the key to mutants coming into the MCU. So that's one thing to keep an ear out for. The people that I think want to leave the planet would be Sprite and Makari. And I think, in the comics, Sprite is used as the bad guy in the Neil Gaiman run, and Druig is obviously being set up as the bad guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if things take a turn with one or both of them. But I think the bottom line is we're not going to end up with 10 very powerful new heroes on Earth by the end of this film. There's a good chance that part of them are going to leave the planet or die. So if we ended up with just a handful, like 3 or 4 left, maybe, Cersei, Phastos, Kingo, and Icarus, or some combination like that, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I think, because I think at least Cersei will end up staying and become part of the Avengers. That's how I see it going forward, but we'll see how that all works out. But it definitely feels like they're taking this shift away from Kirby's original creation, and I'm fascinated to see how all that's going to work out. But go see the movie. Have a good time with it. We'll talk about it next week. Brian, definitely come back. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it when we do our spoiler conversation. So, all right, let's move on to the Book of Boba Fett. Now, this is the first live-action Star Wars project we've gotten since the conclusion of The Mandalorian Season 2, which feels like it was a decade ago. We've gotten WandaVision, Loki, Falcon and Winter Soldier, What If, and we'll get Hawkeye all between Mandalorian Season 2 and Book of Boba Fett. That's a lot of Marvel stuff to come out on Disney Plus, and only one, between the two Star Wars projects. I think Star Wars needs to kind of crank things up, but they do have a few projects in the works, so it's a good chance they're going to be moving up to speed pretty quick. Now, the end of Season 2 is what teased this, where we got to see a post-credit scene that showed Jabba's old palace back on Tatooine. We see Bib Fortuna, Jabba's former right-hand man, who's now sitting on the throne. Fennec Shan appears, takes out the guard, and then Boba himself arrives, kills Bib, takes the throne for himself, and then we get the logo. And and I know a lot of people, when they saw Book of Boba Fett, they went, "Oh my God, is that Mandalorian Season 3?" Because each of the Mandalorians episodes were called chapters. So were those two the Book of Din Djarin, and now we're going into the Book of Boba Fett? Would that be Season 3? Are we moving on? Because now Grogu, a lot of people freaked out about that. And Jon Favreau literally had to go on the Today Show and go, "No, this is a separate series. We're still doing more Mandalorian," because people were freaking out. But, with the logo, they said it would be coming Christmas of 2021, and we are getting it just after Christmas, December 9th, 1 week after Hawkeye wraps up. And that's timed pretty well, because Hawkeye, of course, starts on the 24th of November with 2 episodes, and then the 6th episode will wrap up just a week before Book of Boba Fett. Now, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, who created the Mandalorian series, are executive producers on this, along with Robert Rodriguez. And all 3 of them are set to direct episodes, along with Bryce Dallas Howard. Now, I'm expecting this is going to be less than The Mandalorian. I don't think it's going to be 8 episodes. It's probably more likely going to be 6, or maybe as short as 4. But I'm thinking it's 6, because the rumor is Filoni's directing an episode, Howard's directing an episode, Favreau is directing an episode, and Rodriguez is directing a couple episodes. So that sounds like it's at least 5, maybe 6. So we'll keep, hopefully it is 5 or 6, because, we want more is better. There hasn't been a lot of news on casting. We know that Tamara Morrison is back as Boba Fett, and Ming-Na Wen returns as Fennec Shand. And the only other actress or person that we've seen is actually connected to this series is Jennifer Beals. And until the trailer popped out, we didn't even know what she was playing. We see her in the trailer as a Twi'lek. And it's just a quick shot of her as Boba is going to see the Itharian who's taken over part of Jabba's empire. But we'll see that in just a second. Again, the series premieres December 29th, and it's supposed to be around 5 or 6 episodes long. And it's kind of Mandalorian season 2.5. So just give you a feel for it. It picks up right after season 2, and there's a good chance that Boba will somehow be involved in season 3. So, but if JD, our resident pirate producer, is ready, he'll play the trailer for us.
I am not a bounty hunter. I've heard otherwise. I know that you sit on the throne of your former employer.
Jabba ruled with fear. I intend to rule with respect.
You were all once captains under Jabba the Hutt.
I'm here to make a proposal that's mutually beneficial. Why speak of conflict when cooperation can make us all rich?
What prevents us all from killing you and taking what we want?
If you had spoken such insolence to Jabba, he'd have fed you to his menagerie.
Please. Speak freely.
All right. Now, you guys have seen me break down trailers and cover the series for Marvel stuff like crazy. This is where I got to prove my Star Wars cred. This is what I got from the trailer. All right. So let's go through it. Now, we start off and we see that spider droid walking around. Well, that is a BT-16 perimeter droid, also called a brain walker. And it's moving across the Tatooine desert. Now, those droids carry the brains of monks from the Bomar Order. This is the same order whose monastery became Jabba's palace. He basically moved in. And the Bomar, they basically, we see them the first time in Return of the Jedi. I mean, very early on, where R2 and 3PO are going to Jabba's palace and the doors open, and then there's a spider creature that walks. Well, that's one of the B-16s. Now, these monks would basically reach a certain level of enlightenment and then decide, I'm going to separate my mind from the physical sensations of my body. And they just put their brain inside the droids. You know, they would have just put them in a jar, but they wanted to be able to move around still. So suddenly that's where the brain walkers started. Now, the first dialogue we get is Boba talking to a mysterious voice as he claims to no longer be a bounty hunter, which the voice disputes. And I haven't been able to figure out who the voice is. It sounds familiar, but I think what character it is I think it's the Ithorian, the hammerhead-like alien, who is speaking through a voice box. I think that's the conversation. Now, we also see Boba meeting with various crime captains who used to work for Jabba. And it looks like he's trying to pull together Jabba's empire under his rule. But unlike Jabba, Boba says he's he isn't afraid. Boba's not afraid to get his hands dirty, and we see him and Fennec going up against a group of would-be attackers with these energy shields that look very much like the shields that prevented Obi-Wan Kenobi from getting into the Darth Maul Qui-Gon Jinn fight. You know how they, yeah, spider monks. Nice, Andrew. Now, we get to see the sprawling city on Tatooine. Now, we don't know for sure what city this is, but if I had to guess, I'm going to say it's Mos Espa, which is the capital city of Tatooine. I don't remember it being actually built into a crater, but I don't know of any other city built into a crater either. And this is a big sprawling city compared to what else we've seen on Tatooine. So I'm going to go with Mos Espa until we're told otherwise. Now, Boba's plan is different than Jabba's because he wants, instead of ruling by fear, he wants to rule by respect. And that's kind of Machiavellian. If you ever read the Prince, basically the thing that comes out of it is you either rule by fear or by love. And respect is just a variation on that. But you need to do one or the other. You can't do both. You can't be their best friend and have them fear consequences. You got to choose one side or the other. When he sits around the table with what appears to be Jabba's old crime captains, we get Trandoshan's, which is like Bosk. We get Klatooinians. They're the dog-faced like guys. And Aqualesh, who are similar to, we've met Ponda Baba, or we used to call him Walrus Man when I was a kid. And while he's pitching cooperation, they want to know why they can't just kill him. You know, it's like, we could just kill you and take what we want. And the answer might be in the next scene we see, which are Tusken Raiders. Now, we just see him for a brief moment, but we know that Boba spent some time, if not all of the 5 years after the Sarlacc pit, with the Tusken Raiders. I mean, he was, we first see him again, he's carrying a gaffy stick. So he's got some connection to the Tusken Raiders, and maybe they're his army. Maybe they're his backup. Don't know, but that would be interesting to see him pulling in from the Tusken Raiders. Now, there's multiple crime syndicates out there that won't take kindly to Boba advances. And is it better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both? Yep, that's what I was talking about. So some of the crime families or the syndicates that Boba might have to worry about, and again, they might not be in the first season. Maybe there's a second season, but you've got Crimson Dawn, which we know was headed by Darth Maul for quite some time. It comes up in Solo, the Star Wars story. There are the Pikes, the Black Sun, and the Crymora. Now, I believe it was the Black Sun that Cobb Vanth ended up chasing out of Mos Pelego when he still had Boba's armor. So there's a good chance that the Black Sun will be a part of this, because we know they're already on Tatooine. We get a shot of Boba's ship, the formerly known as Slave One, flying. But I have a feeling that we're not going to get a lot of that ship. Maybe he uses it to get to the other side of the planet or something, because I have a feeling that this series will pretty much take place on Tatooine. You know, we're already there with the end credit scene. We don't really need to go anywhere. This is basically an underworld story on Tatooine, so there's no reason to go anywhere else. We see Boba's helmet roll across the ground, and all the coins in there, those are New Republic credits that spill out. And I think this is a move to distract those that are attacking him, basically seeing if he can buy off some of them, you know, instead of fighting everybody, because you kind of, that's kind of a gangsta move to put money out there and go, well, you know, you could work for me. So I see it that way. Now, we then end with Fennec making this kind of threat where she says that anyone who spoke to Jabba that way would be fed to the menagerie. And that's pretty much like the Rancor. Jabba had a huge collection of deadly animals and stuff, which I don't think is around anymore. But so we get that threat, and they're in the throne room, and then Boba says, "Oh, speak freely," which sounded even more like a threat. So now this feels like it picks up right after the post-credit scene. Like we had the time it took to get for Boba to pick up Fennec off of the cruiser, and then they went to Tatooine, and this is where we're at. So I have a feeling we're just going to pick up and just start moving forward. So, which is kind of interesting because basically we're 5 or 6 years since Return of the Jedi, which means that the criminal underground on Tatooine has had enough time to splinter into sub-factions and have all these little bosses become lieutenants and stuff like that. Now, there was once plus a lot of syndicates would then try to rush in and take over where Jabba's gone, kind of filling the vacuum. There was once a planned Star Wars series. Lucas had this in mind that would have focused on the criminal underworld, and I believe it was on Coruscant. And while that never took off, it seems like they're kind of trying something similar here. Like this is the Star Wars versions of The Sopranos with, you know, the former boss's best hitter coming back to take over the town and trying to take the turf from all the captains. And hang on a second. Thank you, sir. So yeah, like I said, it kind of feels like that. But in this case, Fennec becomes his kind of consigliere and muscle, though Boba will still get into the mix. He'll still throw down. Now, the interesting thing here is that we're going to be exploring more of Tatooine, which is, remember, the very first planet we ever get to see in Star Wars. This is where it all begins. The ships fight, and we come up to this planet, and they launch the droids on there, and we start with Tatooine. This is where it all begins. So, but we've only ever explored, you know, Mos Eisley and, you know, I mean, we're just tiny little places on the planet. So it'd be kind of interesting to see it expand. I mean, yeah, I mean, I just think that would be kind of fun. We'll get a better. We also get to expand more of Jabba's palace, again, which used to be a Balmor monastery that Jabba took over. But we get to see more than just the throne room. Just in the trailer alone, we see a med bay in there, and we see like this nice not patio, but deck porch. I can't think of the word off the top of my head, but basically. A little platform that hangs off the side of the building. Veranda? Sure, let's go with veranda. It's something more simple of a word, but yeah. And we see Boba and Fennec gazing wistfully out into the night, the Tatooine night. So from there. Now, we don't have many recurring characters so far. Boba has pretty interesting history that we can go through, and Fennec has both her time in The Mandalorian and her more recent appearances on The Bad Batch. But other than that, there doesn't appear to be anyone from other films or series so far. There's rumors that Din Djarin may make an appearance. And there are some people on Tatooine we know, like Cobb Vanth and Peli Motto. But overall, there isn't a lot of holdover characters from, you know, the other times we've seen Tatooine. So maybe something else will pop up. Maybe we'll get some visits from some of Boba's old bounty hunter buddies. Like, you know, how cool would it be to see Bosk or IG-88 or Dengar, or maybe we'll get a live action Cad Bane. I mean, Dave Filoni loves to put his characters from the animation into live action whenever he can. So having someone hire Cad Bane to go up against Boba Fett, wouldn't that be an awesome episode? All right. So let's take a look at the background of Boba Fett himself. Now, Boba has an interesting history, and some of the stuff that happened actually happened prior to him ever showing up in Empire Strikes Back. He first actually appeared in September of 1978 at the San Anselmo County Fair as part of the parade. So basically his costume was worn by an assistant film director named Dwayne Dunham. And he just went out and was part of the parade. Now, he would appear for the first time in an actual episode, a project, a few months later when he would debut in the Star Wars Holiday Special. He comes across as this mysterious figure that saves Luke and Chewie and the droids from a giant monster, but we later learn that he's actually working on a bounty from Darth Vader. After that, he would appear in costumes in shopping malls and special events around the country. But the whole idea, they were building up this thing. They had wanted posters for him and stuff like that. Now, originally when the character was first designed, he was going to be like a super stormtrooper. But then they kind of shifted him over to being a bounty hunter, and they painted him. He was going to be all white. There's actually some footage of an all-white Boba Fett. And then it all shifted and changed. Now, when he finally made his live-action film debut in Empire, he was played by a man named Jason Wingreen. Now, he was part of the bounty hunters that Darth Vader hired to find Luke, and he's the one that follows the Millennium Falcon to the Cloud City on Bespin. He also works on a bounty but he's still working on a bounty for Jabba at the same time. So while he's looking for Luke, he knows that Luke is connected to Han, and if he can, and kind of combine the two, that he could get Han and get paid for helping bring Luke in. Because Boba's a wise bounty hunter. Why not, two birds for one stone type of thing. He is able to capture Han. They freeze him in carbonite, and he's able to get out of there with Han before his friends rescue him. So even though Vader doesn't actually get Luke, he gets the opportunity, and I think that's good enough. So I think Jabba fulfilled that contract. Then he shows up at Jabba's with Han Solo. So that's 2 for 2 for the bounty hunter. I think that's actually pretty good. Now, we see him again in Return of the Jedi, and this is where it gets kind of funny, is we get this character build-up of what this badass bounty hunter, and then when we see him in Jabba's, the thing, he's in Jabba's palace for a few minutes, he doesn't do anything, and then when he finally gets into the fight off of Jabba's big barge, over the sand barge, he does 2 or 3 things, and then a blind Han Solo hits him with a staff, triggers his jetpack, and sends him careening off, slamming into the barge, and then dropping into the Sarlacc pit, where he's supposed to be digested for the next thousands of years. And that was where it ended. So they had years of buildup for Boba Fett, wanted posters, they had the toy thing, all that. And then when you actually get him to see him fight, he's taken out by a blind Han Solo in a lucky move. Now, we later got to the prequels where we get to meet Jango Fett, played by Tamora Morrison, who was a Mandalorian bounty hunter and the donor to all the clone troops. So basically all the clone troopers were made from Jango Fett. And as part of his payment for being the donor, he requested an unaged clone to be raised that he could raise as a son. Now, he would name him Boba, and he was played by Daniel Logan in the films. Now, Morrison ended up voicing all of the clones in Star Wars, the Clone Wars animated series, as well as the more recent The Bad Batch, which focuses on a bunch of clones. Now, he voices all but one, and we'll get to that one in a minute. Lucasfilms also decided to go back through both Empire and Return of the Jedi and dub over Wingreen's voice, replacing it with Morrison saying the same lines. So I know that's been kind of controversial. Some fans hate that. Some fans like it. But that's up for yourself. You can figure that out. Also in The Bad Batch, we learned that there were 2 unaged clones. Boba was actually Alpha, the first. And the last one was Omega. So in a way, Boba has a sister. And Omega is the one clone that Morrison doesn't do the voice of course, because she's a young girl. And I don't think Morrison could do that, not without a lot of special effects to the voice. Now, first time we see Boba Fett again it's more of a hint at. In the first season of Mandalorian, in the same episode where we meet Fennec Shand, there's a teaser of a mysterious figure walking up to Shan's body, and we hear that telltale sound of spurs, which made a lot of fans believe that Boba Fett was coming back. And it is supposed to be the sound of spurs, because when Lucas designed Boba Fett, he was basically making him off of Clint Eastwood's character, the Man with No Name. So he wanted that total Western feel to him. And that's why the cloak is the way it is. It's kind of supposed to be kind of like the poncho that poncho he wears and stuff like that. So he's supposed to be the Man with No Name. Now, it wouldn't be until the premiere of season 2 that tease would start to pay off as we meet Cobb Vanth. And he's the sheriff of Mos Pellico, who ran the crime syndicates out of town by wearing the Mandalorian armor, Boba Fett's armor, that he had gotten off the Jawas. Now, this was our first clue that maybe Boba Fett somehow escaped the Sarlacc. Or the Sarlacc ate Boba Fett and just spit out the armor, and the Jawas found it and cleaned it up. Either way, we had the armor. Now, of course, Mando helps out the town to defeat the is it another Sar? No, it's not another Sarlacc. It's a Krayt Dragon. He defeats the Krayt Dragon along with the Tusken Raiders, and in return, Vanth gives him the armor. So he's leaving the planet with the armor. Well, as he's going across the desert on a speeder, we see this figure watching him. And it turns and is Tamura Morrison, done up in dark robes with a gaffy stick and a long rifle on his back. And just about anybody who was into Star Wars knew that was going to be Boba Fett. We got our first appearance, but again, would not see him at all. I thought the Krayt Dragon ate the Sarlacc, that ate Boba, and the Jawas found the armor in the remains. That's what I got. I thought the Krayt Dragon ate the Sarlacc. It's not clear, and I've actually read the novels, the Chuck Wendig novels, where that comes out of, and they never really address how they got the armor. They just say they found it out in the desert. I could be wrong. I mean, that I don't remember seeing that specifically, Kyle, but that could be. Yes, the Krayt Dragon was definitely living in an old Sarlacc pit, and there's a good chance the Krayt Dragon killed the Sarlacc, but the connection of how the Jawas get the armor, I don't know. But yeah, that's a very viable option. Now, all right, so we wouldn't see him again until the episode called The Tragedy, which was directed by Robert Rodriguez. And it's the only episode filmed on location in season 2. Everything else was filmed in the volume. This was filmed on location. Now, this is the episode where Fett and Fennec Shand follow Mando to Tython to get back the armor, and he promises no harm would come to Mando or Grogu in exchange for the armor. Well, he gets his armor back, but that's when Moff Gideon shows up and kidnaps Grogu. And Boba feels that he's now honor-bound to aid Mando to get the child back safely. Fennec, we find out, was rescued by Boba and pledged to her, to Boba. So when Boba basically pledges to Mando, she comes along too. So they all work together to locate and then defeat Gideon and rescue Grogu before he's taken off by Luke. And it's interesting that when Luke shows up, Boba's not on the ship, because that would have been an interesting thing to see Boba Fett and Luke Skywalker together, but we didn't get that. Once his debt to Mando was technically paid, he and Fennec hopped into Slave One, or whatever they're calling the ship now, and they fly off to the post-credit scene. Now, all the hype done for the character prior to his appearance made him one of the most... This is kind of a story from my childhood. made him one of the most anticipated action figures to come from Kenner. And Kenner decided to do something unique with it. You could send away for him. If you collected proof of purchase seals on the back of the cardboards, cut them out and sent them in along with shipping, they would send you the first Boba Fett figure. But the problem is, around the time that this happened, there was an incident where a child choked on a plastic projectile from a Battlestar Galactica Colonial Viper toy. He basically shot the thing into his own mouth and choked on it. Well, this caused the entire industry to change how they were doing things. And no longer were they doing projectiles and all of that. And Boba Fett got sent back to the drawing board. They had to make his jetpack solid where it wouldn't fire. And it delayed shipping by months and months and months. And I got to tell you, I checked that mail every day for months waiting for that damn thing to show up. I sat outside, the mailman would see me and he'd be like, nope. He knew I was looking for a little package from Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I think that's where it was, or was that G.I. Joe? Anyway, yeah, I waited a long time to get that figure, and then when I finally did, the damn thing didn't fire. It's a tragedy from my childhood. All right, we're going to move on. Talk about Fennec Shand, who has a much shorter history. And while we see her first in season 1 of The Mandalorian, we've finally got some prior history to her. And it's this kind of an interesting connection because we see her back in the Bad Batch series, and she was hired by one of the cloners, Nala C, to bring the young female clone Omega back to her after the Bad Batch took her. Now, she tries befriending Omega when they first meet on the planet Pantora, but her true intentions are revealed and the Bad Batch help rescue Omega. Now, she later returns in another attempt to get Omega, but this time she's trying to get Omega back from Cad Bane, who had captured her. And it puts the two of them in conflict. So we get this whole episode that is Cad Bane versus Fennec Shand, and it might be the single best episode of the Bad Batch. And while they're fighting, the Bad Batch comes back in, grabs Omega, and takes off. Well, yes, my ringtone is The Mandalorian, by the way. But she ends up getting off the planet, but before she leaves, she sabotages Cad's ship, leaving him stranded. Then she contacts Nala, who tells her it's okay. I'm going to send you your money. We're going to call this off because she now thinks that Omega is safer with the Bad Batch than if she was brought back to the planet. And what we end up seeing in the series, that was a very wise move. The planets, the cloners are gone, and she's taken in to help the Empire now. Now, that series takes place about 28 years prior to The Mandalorian, where we meet an older Fennec Shand who has a bounty on her head that this very young gunslinger named Toro Calican wants to collect, but he knows he's green. So he enlists the aid of Mando, offering to give him all the money that they could earn, but he gets the credit for bringing her in. And Mando's fine with that because A, he's not actually part of the guild anymore, and B, he needs the money to repair the ship. So they go out into the desert and go after her, and it's an interesting little battle, but we really get to see how good she is, and they finally capture her. But in doing so, one of their transportations, a Dubek, gets run off. So Mando has to run, or one of the speeders was broken, so they had to go off and get the Dubek. Anyway, the way it worked out, Mando had to leave, and while Toro was watching Fennec, she explained to him, well, I may be a decent bounty, but Mando there, he's the big bounty, and especially that child that he's supposed to be with. So you should forget about me, or let me help you and we'll take out Mando and then take the child back. Well, Toro shoots Fennec, leaves her for dead, then races back to town to try to get Grogu, but Mando follows. There's a big showdown, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. The Great Dragon... Oh, yeah, sorry. I already read that one. So that's where we find Fennec was basically left dead in the desert. And, of course, that's where Boba Fett finds her. And later when we learn in the tragedy, the episode, that Boba actually medically repaired her. She's got like a cybernetic replacement stomach now. Kind of interesting. With him saving her, she then swears her loyalty to Boba and accompanies him to retrieve his armor, and then aids Din Djarin and the other Mandalorians in going up against Moff Gideon before her and Fett, of course, head back to Tatooine. Now, at this point, we're not exactly sure where the extent of the relationship is between Boba and Fennec. Is she there until the end, or does her loyalty have an expiration date? And is there something more between them than just gratitude? Could there be a romantic tie between the two? It's kind of interesting. I looked it up, and age-wise, we've only got 3 actors in the series. The 2 leads are close in age. Morrison is 61, Ming-Na Wen is 58, and then the third person in it is Jennifer Beals, who is also 58. So, it's kind of weird that we have a series that the only 3 main actors that we know of are in it are all older actors, you know? And maybe we get a love triangle there. I don't know. Be kind of interesting. Boba did seem to like the Twi'leks in Return of the Jedi, so who knows? Well, while there are a few Star Wars series in various stages of production, like Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Rogue One prequel Andor, this and the Ahsoka series are the only ones in the same kind of time era as The Mandalorian. Andor, of course, takes place, 5, 6, 7, 8 years beforehand. So that, so it's at least 8 years prior. And then Obi-Wan also takes place before that. So these are the only ones that are actually in this time, because I also think Rangers of the New Republic is dead. So, and we've heard that there's going to be this kind of big crossover series that pulls all these together. So I think that while Book of Boba Fett appears to be centered on Boba and Tatooine, both Boba and Fennec will have more to do with the Mandalorian and the battle for Mandalore, or maybe even Grand Admiral Thrawn in the future. So that's kind of what we're looking forward to with this series. I expect it to be heavily underworld related. Like I said, it's Star Wars version of Sopranos. It's going to be him taking control as the new crime boss of Tatooine, and what he has to go up against. Does this put him against Crimson Dawn or the Black Sun or any of those people? It should be a pretty interesting series, but I think it'll be somewhat self-contained, and then we'll get back into the bigger overall series. Starpranos. Nice. So, all right, guys, that was my breakdown of the trailer. And like I said, I hope that shows my my cred on Star Wars. You guys have heard me talk about Marvel, but that's the first Star Wars breakdown I've done on the Dan Wickline Show. Coming up right after this is going to be What's in the Box with Miss Jen, and she opens a random box from her warehouse and gives you great deals on whatever's inside. So basically, she opens it up and sells you whatever's in it. And then tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, we have our only late night show, which is Kicking It with Henri, as Henri delves into his extensive warehouse to bring you rare indie books, keys, and signed books at great prices. So we got 2 shows coming up. We got right after us with What's in the Box, and then late night with Kicking It with Henri. So you'll want to stick around for those. I will be back next week. We will definitely be doing a Eternal spoiler discussion. And I'm going to have to start talking about the Hawkeye series coming up, and I have to start prepping for that. But I'm also probably going to do a breakdown of The Lost Symbol. I did the first couple episodes, but I need to sit down and watch the rest of them. And we'll talk about that. So that's tentatively what's up for next week. There will definitely be an Eternals one, though. And whatever else the news dictates. So stick around for that. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Tell your friends about the show. And thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure this week. Brian says something about Nebraska winning tomorrow. Is anybody a winner if you're in Nebraska? That would be my first question. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you all next week. Have a terrific weekend. Stick around for Miss Jen.